Hello Jason, it's Tuesday, June 17th, and due to some iPhone video formatting issues, this video is coming to you late. But let me assure you that it's going to be totally worth it. And why will it be totally worth it? Cue special presentation. Let's go to the Renaissance Fair. There's plenty to do at the Renaissance Fair. In fact, I spent most of my Sunday there, and there's actually some stuff that I didn't end up doing. You can watch some pretty good comedy shows, like this one, which involves two men throwing each other in mud. You can see people dancing around with fire, things that, quite frankly, don't seem all that safe, but are pretty impressive. You can see a real-life blacksmith doing some real-life blacksmithing. You can hear some awesome bagpipe and drum music. But by then, you'll probably want to go back inside and see a lot more fire. Very impressive fire, thrown right in your face. But everybody knows that the main event is the joust. And yes, this is real jousting with solid wooden lances. So that's pretty much how I spent my Sunday, and as you can probably tell, I was out in the sun a little bit too long, and I got a bit red. But you know what I say to that? Totally worth it. I also recently managed to finish reading Under the Dome by Stephen King, the 1,074-page monster I decided to pick up when I couldn't choose a smaller book that interested me. And while it was an enjoyable book overall, I have to say that it's not my favorite Stephen King book by a long shot. And bear in mind, I've only ever read about a half dozen Stephen King books, so it's not really looking too good for Under the Dome. Now, if you don't already know, the book basically follows the lives of the people who are in Chester's Mill when a mysterious force field descends on the small town. All these characters are thrown into an unexplainable crisis situation, and they act in different ways. Some of them grasp for power, while others try and find a way out of this mysterious dome. And I'd have to say that my major problem with this book is that it just involves way too many characters whose stories don't end up being all that important. And to make that sense even worse, there are a number of characters who are essentially doubles of each other. For example, there's this kid named Joe, who's a really smart kid, and he understands the way that things work that nobody else in the town does. Except for Rory, who's a really smart kid who understands how things work. In fact, the number of exceptional people trapped within the small town is kind of mind-blowing, considering the fact that there's less than 2,000 people inside the dome when it falls. But enough about characters. I think the fact that the book is over 1,000 pages was completely unnecessary, though reading it never really felt as tedious as other 1,000-page books I've read. I would attribute the majority of this fact to Stephen King's writing alone. He has a way of getting you interested in things that otherwise wouldn't matter in a book. Example, the book's first section is called The Airplane and the Woodchuck, and it describes what happens to two things as the wall descends, an airplane and a woodchuck. The airplane is clearly the more exciting of the two. It crashes into the side of the dome and explodes, raining body parts all over the place. But nonetheless, when it comes time for you to observe what happens to the woodchuck, you still end up just as interested because Stephen King is able to use his writing to make you interested. From the literary perspective, though, I think that aside from his writing, Stephen King doesn't really bring much to the table in Under the Dome. In my opinion, this was never really meant to be a book about anything other than entertainment, and while it does play around with some bigger ideas, they aren't really the central focus of the story. So, purely for its writing, from a literary perspective, I'm going to give the book a 3 out of 5. And from an entertainment perspective, I'm going to give it a 4. And now, on to Battleship. Your last shot was another miss. And I have a strong suspicion that when I make my next move, attacking H5 that is, there will only be one ship standing between me and my victory.